and drinking black coffee. Burnt toast and drinking black coffee. Burnt toast and drinking black coffee. Yeah, that's all she left me.
But the idea really today is for just to kind of understand a little bit more about your role within the world of HR and recruitment, and to sort of have a discussion really and a conversation around your experiences in that area, particularly over the lockdown. So it'll be good to kind of just, for everybody that's watching and listening to this, to understand a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Of course, yeah. So my name's Tony Ferrari. I'm the Head of Talent Acquisition and Retention for Precious Homes. Precious Homes is an organisation that looks after guys with autism, learning disabilities and mental health issues. Sometimes a combination of all those things. We've got 42 care homes up and down the country, and I joined the company around 4 years ago, and when I arrived, the recruitment function was quite a small function, and the recruitment was being done in a certain way which I maybe didn't subscribe to. We had guys sitting in an office basically just trawling through adverts and trawling through websites trying to get applicants to go and attend an interview at one of our services. Obviously the inevitable happened, and we used to get one person out of 6 arrive, and it was just awful. So my role when I came in was really with a couple of other guys that I was working with at the time to try and come up with a values-based recruitment process that we could roll out for the whole of the organisation.
Well, that's interesting. Is that something that you carried out in other roles then, with organisations, Tony? Or?
No, no. This was unique to this particular industry. I mean, I've never worked in this industry before,
right?
And I felt that the approach needed to be different in recruitment. I mean, I've done recruitment roles, high street roles, which are very cut and thrust and very cutthroat, and just get somebody in there, those type of things. This was different. This was completely different. It was around, you know, I went around for a couple of months speaking to people, just trying to get a feel of what the organisation was about, and people were talking about matching their service user to the person that was giving them care. So we would have to be that sort of specific to match those people together. So it then started me thinking about what we could do to showcase the person's talents that arrived for an interview on the day, and how could I show the managers those traits and those qualities. That was the important part. I quickly worked out that these guys, recruitment wasn't their strong point. The majority of them, they were carers. They were people that had probably transitioned through our company. They'd started as a support worker and ended up as a manager, and they hated recruiting. They just didn't like it. And so then there was another thing about getting them engaged and getting them to enjoy the process and getting them to really like it, so that we could make an event out of it and make sure that they were making the correct choices. I had to do everything that I could to eliminate all those doubts out of the way, so that they were left with just the right set of people to select from.
So you're really winning hearts and minds internally with your own recruitment guys.
It took a while as well. You know, people, the most common phrase I came across was, "We've always done it this way."
Done it this way. So all this was prior to lockdown then. So can you very briefly describe how you would get somebody onboarded and chosen, and sort of prior to lockdown?
Of course. So we would hold an assessment day. So we would book a venue in an area, and we're fortunate that we've got care homes which are clustered. So we would be able to pick a venue and then invite 5 or 6 of our care home managers to come to that one venue to then select staff together. And as you can imagine, people used to fight over the same person. But we would do that. We would invite 30, 40 people. We'd get a decent attendance, normally 15, 20 people would turn up. And we'd go through a process of elimination, I suppose is the best way to put it. people would watch, the first step would be people would come in and watch a video. The video stops. It's a scenario of a support worker coming to see you and speak to you. They say something, it stops, and then you get 4 options, A, B, C, or D. You choose one, and then the video progresses and degenerates into quite a bad situation. And we ask the guys to do that so that we get an idea of how they might react in a service. Gives us a little bit of an idea. We then split people into 3 or 4 groups, and we'd ask them to work on different tasks, scenario tasks. So one of the tasks that we had running was, Mary's your service user. She's asked you to support her to go to a slimming club. You've been supporting her to go to a slimming club, and everything's going very well. You're out one day shopping, she sees a piece of chocolate cake and she wants it. What do? So there's things like, you know, distracting. There's things like let her have the cake. There's things like cut the cake in half. There's things like let's go to the supermarket and buy some ingredients and make our own cake, which is more healthy. Those types of things. So we get these guys in a group and we get them to sort of start brainstorming what they might do in the situation, in that type of situation. All the time that they're doing these 4 tasks, our managers are walking around with an evaluation sheet, and they're just evaluating and looking at that person. Now, what they should be doing is that matching process. So they're thinking, right, Jim at the service is, this guy, he does this, he likes this, he likes that. Okay, Fred, who's here today, he will be a great match for him. So, okay, and when I see these guys, they normally have this sheet of paper with them, and they're writing down their notes, and they've got, by the name of the person that's in the room, they've got an initial, and normally it's the initial of the service user. So they're doing that matching process.
That's really interesting. So I mean that sort of suggests to me that every time you're going through this kind of recruitment process, if either your service users have changed and there's new service users, or their requirements have changed, basically the job spec is completely turned on its head. I mean, is there always, from the Precious Homes' requirement, kind of a base sort of requirement in terms of, you know, if you had a job spec and you could say, here are the top 10 things that someone must have, do you even work on that basis, or you just say anyone can come in and I will speak to anybody?
I try to eliminate that. I'll tell you for why. Before I arrived, as I said, they were doing these things where they would go through a CV or print a CV off of the internet, and if somebody had applied for a job and they didn't have care experience, they went in the bin.
Right.
If I tell you, I can't tell you how many times I've turned up on one of these days. There's been a young lady there, and absolutely outstanding performer. I'll go and look at her CV. There's no care on her CV. Why do you think that might be? Because her brother's had autism and she's lived with that guy for 15 or 20 years, and she's far more experienced, more qualified than anybody that might have it on their CV in a care home for 2 or 3 years. So we were missing out on a whole raft of people. So we will not, it's not my job to eliminate people before they even start. That means that when we do an advertising campaign on a role for an area, we may have, you know, 100, 120, 130 people apply. Every one of those people will be invited to the assessment day. It's then their choice if they attend. We'll send them some notes which will explain exactly what's going to happen on the day. We explain why we do our recruitment in this way. And for me, that thing has always been quite self-policing. The people that have turned up have been people that are interested, engaged, want to do the work. And we do go through a process of trying to put people off, in the sense that I'll send them a film of very challenging behaviour, and I'll say to them, look, before you come to the interview, please watch this so that you understand what the role might entail when you end up in one of our services. And you know, for me, as I said, I feel that it sort of self-polices itself. People do then may turn around and say, maybe that's not for me, maybe I can't do that. I was doing it for my brother, but I don't know about doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, there could be a whole different raft of things. So, you know,
it's interesting that you must have to have quite unique recruitment people within your organisation, because if they must need to know intimately the service users' needs to match.
Okay.
That is unusual within recruitment, isn't it?
It's very unusual for me, because the roles that I've done in the past have been 360 roles where I've placed the advert, hired the person. I don't do the last 75%, the last 25% now anymore.
Yeah.
I don't do the last 25% anymore. The last 25% is done by the managers who attend the assessment days.
I see.
And make the selection, and by service users.
Yeah.
So the way that we set it up, we're able to involve the service users.
Yeah.
Allow them to make choices about who cares for them as well.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. Yeah, makes complete sense.
Absolutely. And so it's not me making that choice at the end, guys. What I'm doing is I'm putting, hopefully, 15, 20 really good people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They're showcasing their talents and showing what they can do. So show us, don't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Conventional interviews is I'll sit down and tell you how brilliant I am, but then I'll turn up for the first day of work and I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Show us, don't tell us. Okay, so show us you can do the job. Show us you've got the right value. Show us that you've got a different way of working. And then the managers make those decisions. Mm. They look at the people. They'll make a short list of people that they want to see. And we do it at the end of the process. We do a very quick fire 10-minute interview. Very quick. Just a quick skirt through, chance for the manager to meet with the person face to face very quickly. Very important it doesn't turn into a big long-winded interview, because in my mind, they should have 80% already made their decision based on what they've seen in the room already.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I said, you know, a lot of this was born from the fact that I figured out pretty quickly that these guys are not recruiters.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah.
There's high turnover of staff. Historically, they probably made some poor choices of people that they've allowed through their doors to, you know, to work in one of our services. So it was about all those, overcoming all those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So then lockdown, COVID-19 dropped. So how did that impact your process and your...
It impacted terribly, because obviously, as you can tell from what I've said to you, it's been a very people-orientated process up to this stage, and you know, engaging and interacting with people has been the main part of making our decision making. And so that left us with a real issue. The issues that we had in the main, around 2 weeks before lockdown happened, we made the decision that we would cancel our events. So we did it maybe 2 weeks before officially it went into lockdown. Yeah. We cancelled those events, and we had to come up very quickly with an alternative plan. The important thing was for us that people weren't going into the service for an interview. So to keep people away from the service, to keep service users safe, and to keep our staff safe.
Yeah.
And so, like many other companies, I suppose the alternative was to do something over technology. We also figured at that stage that people would be, the lockdown was coming, and people would be locked down, and then they would have more time on their hands. So we felt we could ask them to do more steps in our recruitment process. So under conventional times, people would apply for a job. We would send them an invite to the assessment day. We'd send them a few videos, and then they would decide if they were coming or not. This way, we put a lot more steps in. So if the guys apply for the job, they still get the video, which tells them a bit more about the role. And then they'll get a task sent through to them. So I quickly adapted SurveyMonkey. I use SurveyMonkey to use it as a questioning tool rather than a survey tool. Something that I had a subscription for already, and I figured, right, I could put 20 questions on here, and then I can take a look back at it after and see what the person scored. So that worked really well. So we started off with a multiple choice abuse task. So it gives an example of an abuse, gives you 3 options, and you choose A, B, C, or D. Sorry, A, B, C, A, B, C. It replicates one of the tasks that we do at the actual assessment day. So that became our first step. And we basically sat down and we said, right, guys have got a score about 80%. They can get 4 wrong to pass through to the next part.
Yeah.
The next part is an assessment evaluation test. So again, this replicates the test that they would do on the table in a group with other colleagues. There are questions in there like the cake question that I mentioned earlier, but also questions like Philip is one of your service users, he's proposed to a partner, the family are very unhappy and they've asked you to discourage Philip from seeing the partner again. What would you do? So there I'm looking for people to say, I'm there to look after Philip. The family are not my concern. Philip is my primary concern, and if it makes Philip happy, Philip can do what he likes. He's an adult. He's independent.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So we're looking for certain answers to those questions. There's 4 of those questions. We give them 20 minutes to complete that. We then ask them to do an application form, not a conventional application form. There's a few curveballs in there. So one of the curveballs is if we gave you £10,000 to donate to a charity, where would you donate it? There are just some other little quirky things in the application form there as well. That all leads, those steps all lead to them doing a Zoom or a WhatsApp or a Teams interview directly with the manager. That's about a 30-minute interview. The manager is sent all the information beforehand, so they have everything. They can see everything that the applicant has done up to that point. They can use that obviously then to formulate some questions around that, and they have some questions as well, which they have as pre-scripted questions as well. From that, we then decide on a hire or regret. If we hire, we start the onboarding process as we would normally after an assessment day, and we'd onboard that person. Training has obviously changed a little now, because we would do face-to-face training pretty quickly. Now these guys are having to do online training for a large part. But then we get them, we obviously ensure that the applicant hasn't suffered any symptoms of COVID-19 prior to coming in, and we'll get them into the service and give them an induction in the service now. And they'll continue with their training as well, so that onboarding part has changed slightly as well.
Yeah. So with those additional steps that you mentioned, Tony, has that produced any particular advantages or improvements in the recruitment process? Because I think a lot of organisations have found that actually technology is great. The technology is there to help replace what you would do normally, but does that perhaps also give the recruiters and the people involved in recruiting more time to consider those individual applications? Potentially,
yes. I mean, I really loved the process that we had before, where it was all happening in front of you. I don't know, but if I was doing that test and I was unsure of an answer, do you know what? I could look it up quickly and then type in whatever I found there. So, you know, it's not completely foolproof. It's not completely secure in that sense. You know, and I'm sure that if people go through and they've done that and they go through an interview, they'll soon get found out. I'm sure that happens. You know, but I'm not completely and utterly convinced on it. The other thing that I would say, Rehan, is that I don't believe that once this lockdown finishes that people will tolerate doing 6 or 7 steps.
Yeah.
Not our level of applicants.
Not
the wages that we pay, the level of the job, everything else taken into consideration. I don't think that they'll do all those steps. So I think going forward, it's rather difficult, because there'll be things that we can and can't do. Will people want to come into a room where there's 20 other people and attend an assessment day? Maybe not. Will my team want to do that? Maybe not. Will I want to do that? Maybe not. So there will have to be, I feel there'll have to be like a blended approach of what we were doing before and what we're doing now, to blend that together. So
I mean, it's a good point, because I mean, recruiting people into the care sector is a massive challenge anyway, because it's not seen as a career in the traditional sense. You mentioned kind of sort of the wages that are paid and so on and so forth. So there's kind of some really, kind of grassroots level challenges within the industry anyway. There's obviously some changes being made by central government to kind of promote that now. Are you starting to see the effects of that coming through?
Yeah, I think silly things, like the care badge and some of the other things that have been prompted have given applicants maybe a sense of belonging and feeling like they belong to something that's maybe more inclusive and more important than before. And as I said, our focus, my job role is talent acquisition and retention. So one of the big things that we've turned to now is this retention side, and trying to get feedback from our our guys that work for us, and it's very, very, very difficult. And the reason it's very difficult is because, in effect, we have 42 small individual businesses all dotted all over the place. Whilst certain practices and certain things are done to a standard, the culture and the way that the atmosphere is in each service can completely differ. And sometimes that's not down to the manager, that might be down to the service users.
That dictates it.
So trying to find a formula that works for everybody is very, very tough and very difficult. This is why I believe that in the past the company suffered with its retention, and that the industry suffers with retention in general, is around things, you say the salary and the conditions and things like that. When we do exit interviews, normally that isn't mentioned. It's normally other stuff. Yes, people should be getting more money. There should be more benefits, and that's part of my job to push for that on their behalf. But also there are other factors involved as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That I was going to ask you a question around the cultural fit, which you've answered, and that mirrors, experiences of employees that have left, bigger organisations, even the ones that aren't in the care sector. It's often about the feeling of being there, or their line manager or senior management or their co-workers, and how that kind of culture has impacted on the way that they work.
It's a very strange environment, Rehan, because you could join one of our services, you could be put one-to-one with one of our service users, so you feel like you're working by yourself, which in effect you are with that person, but you're working in a team of 60 or 70 other support workers, and having that balance of being able to sort of be focused on the one person, but also to be inclusive with the rest of your team and include them in all the information that needs to be fed back to them, the reports that you have to do, all that type of thing. It's a unique type of role and circumstance. I've never come across anything like that in my time during recruitment. So it is a unique sort of position to recruit on. Yeah.
You mentioned a while ago about possible sort of change in demographic of those coming into the service in that sense. Do you think that will make a difference in terms of the more mature, the older person?
Yes. I'm a great believer in that. I think there are people, I can see people from the applications that we're getting through. There are older people, my generation, people 50 plus, that are considering maybe doing their last few years of work within a care setting, and that certainly is the case. And I think with that, there comes great things like experience. People's perception of that generation is that they're more reliable. They'll be there on time. They're more likely to do overtime. They'll engage with the app, with the service users. I subscribe to that. I think it's a good thing. We certainly over this lockdown period hired more people in that bracket than we would have done the previous 3 months. So yeah.
Okay, so that could be the long-term answer.
Yeah.
But I guess in a way they will also bring with them their unique needs. Yes,
absolutely, yes, and
managing a 50-plus person is different than managing a 20-plus person, I guess.
It is.
Being a 50-plus person myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We tend to have more doctor's appointments, don't we, and those types of things. So, I mean, but at the end, we're a care company.
Yes, exactly.
And that was one of the things. One of my first meetings that I had with the senior team at Precious Homes, and sort of said to them, look, we're a care company. Where we should start caring first off is with our staff teams.
Yeah.
It makes no sense for a care company to not treat the staff teams in a caring and thoughtful manner, because it completely goes against the grain of what our company is about. So,
and going back to that culture bit, that would drive the essence of the kind of the basic culture that you could have, or that you do have within Precious Homes.
It's interesting because we just had a new head of people start at our business. We've had a new person that's coming in to deliver training, and we've had a couple of meetings, and we were trying to come up with a strap line for the HR function, and one of the things we came up with was caring for you so that you can care for others. And that's really the essence of what we should be doing.
And just a final question, I suppose, a discussion around kind of the future. We don't know what that looks like. I think you alluded it to being kind of a mixture, certainly in terms of the use of technology when you're onboarding and recruiting employees into the organisation. Do you think that you'll look to use technology a lot more in the future in that area and mix and match to the type of scenarios that you're faced with?
I think so. I think there will be a blend. As I said, the company's probably quite happy, because I was spending probably up to about £1,000 per event, because we used to put on lunch as well for our applicants, because they'd be with us most of the day. So that was a venue. If it was a venue in London, it was quite expensive. Then catering coming in, that's all gone. I think there will be a blend of technology, and there has to be some face-to-face engagement, but maybe that comes later down the line, as we're doing at the moment. Things work relatively well now as they are, but as I said, I feel, just through my experience and through what I've done in the past, I feel that people will not do all these steps. We struggle at the moment, to be honest. We have to. We sometimes, I've got a team of guys, and they're pushing people over the line. They're calling people to say, could you complete that form, and then we can set up an interview for you. So we're pushing people even now, when they're supposedly locked down and they're at home and they've got enough time on their hands to sit there and complete one of our little questionnaires. So you can imagine, once things go back to whatever normal is, and people have less time on their hands, then the feeling would be that maybe they won't complete all these steps. So it's now thinking about how we can filter the people effectively, and then my ideas at the moment are to set up this type of call, have 5 or 6 applicants on it, have 4 or 5 managers sitting on there as well, and we do a replication of the assessment day, where I flash up a laminate on the screen for them and say, Jim is your service user, blah 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 blah. Right, discuss it, guys. and I leave them, and then just to discuss it, and then we start to pick up who we feel might be suitable.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the way forward.
That's brilliant. Well, that's been really useful, Tony, and I think we've covered probably everything that we were hoping to cover with you. And so
I've enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me, and enjoy sharing the ideas. And if it benefits somebody else out there, or some other guys would like to know anything further which might enhance their recruitment process, I'm happy to speak to them.
I'll be burnt toast and drinking black coffee. Burnt toast and drinking black coffee. Burnt toast and drinking black coffee. Yeah.